all forms of hard power and some forms of soft power entail the ability to inflict harm upon others. Some forms of soft power can be examined in this respect if they entail the ability to inflict harm on individuals in terms of depriving them of opportunities, such as economic rewards, employment, education, and services. But the mere existence of these forms of power is no guarantee that anyone will actually be harmed. With an equal harm power symmetry, nobody inflicts actual harm on anybody, for fear that harm subjectively perceived to be of an equal degree will be inflicted on the aggressor in return. Let's examine some examples of equal harm power symmetries. Example 6. Mutually assured destruction between the NATO powers and the Warsaw Pact during the Cold War is a classic case of an equal harm power symmetry, where each side had the ability to inflict the greatest harm imaginable on the other, and therefore neither side seriously damaged the other. Neither the United States nor the Soviet Union dared to engage in direct conventional war against the other, for fear that such a struggle might escalate into a nuclear war that would destroy all of civilization. Example 7. A community in which each resident owns and can use a firearm exhibits an equal harm power symmetry. No individual will dare aggress against the other for fear of losing his life. This has been shown to be one of the most effective arrangements for deterring private crime as well as government aggression, since there is only so much a government can compel people to do before their patience wears out and they refuse to comply further. If the population is extensively armed, then the government cannot simply punish refusal to comply with overwhelming force, for fear that its agents might actually fail in executing the punishment. Example 8. A normal employment situation exhibits an equal harm power symmetry. Both the employee and the employer are bound by a mutual interest. The employee receives money in exchange for services rendered. If the employee is displeased with his compensation, he can choose to leave the firm and deprive the employer of his services. If the employer considers the employee insufficiently skilled or productive, he can dismiss the employee. A symmetrical employment situation is contingent on the availability of alternatives to both the employer and the employee. For an equal harm power symmetry to exist, the employee needs to be able to find other ways to earn a living, though they do not need to be in even a remotely similar occupation, and do not need to compensate him in the same manner or to the same degree as his present employment. The employer needs to have the ability to find other employees or means of getting done the work he desires, or otherwise to adjust his priorities without substantial harm to himself. Example 9. A government characterized by effective checks and balances is in a state of equal harm power symmetry. Each branch of government can be restrained in some manner by the other branches, and all branches can be restrained by the people, whereas the majority of the people can be restrained by agencies within the government from violating the rights of minorities. This prevents any branch from usurping the entirety of the political power and imposing tyranny on the people. It also prevents an angry mob from disposing of individuals whom it dislikes. Majorities and minorities alike are deterred by checks and balances from inflicting harm on individuals outside of any given group. Example 10. A family established within a proper legal framework is one of the most effective ways to bring about an equal harm power symmetry. In a marriage, the conduct of either party could easily destroy the entire relationship, but in a marriage rightly constituted, each party has this power, and so neither engages in it. The goodwill of one's spouse is earned by displaying goodwill in kind, by making it unambiguously known that one will honor all the components of marriage, material and emotional, provided that one's spouse does the same. Similarly, a proper relationship between parents and children constitutes an equal harm power symmetry. The parents provide the children with a material standard of living, as well as with an emotional and intellectual upbringing. But they cannot choose to altogether deprive their children of this support, because both the law and their parental sentiments forbid it. They can, however, modify their children's upbringing and privileges based on the children's conduct. The children, on the other hand, can choose to be cooperative or rebellious, based on their perception of how their parents treat them. In a proper family relationship, the children will choose to cooperate in exchange for a materially, emotionally, and intellectually fulfilling level of support from their parents. Equal harm power symmetries are stabler than no harm power symmetries. According to power symmetry principle number 2, equal harm power symmetries, once established, tend to remain and to exhibit immunity against disturbances. The stability of an equal harm power symmetry is directly proportional to the number of parties it involves. As long as the balance of power among the parties involved in an equal harm power symmetry remains the same, no harm will come to any party from any other. Over time, however, it is possible for the power of some to increase and the power of others to diminish. These disturbances can be addressed by the symmetrical arrangement. If in a community where all individuals distrust one another and own swords, one purchases a gun, the other can respond either by purchasing guns of their own or exercising additional vigilance with regard to the original gun owner. If in a government, one branch appropriates a new power to itself, the other branches might either attempt to exercise a veto over that power, or to equip themselves with powers to counterbalance the power in question. The more distinct parties partake in an equal harm power symmetry, the easier it becomes to address the acquisition of additional power by any one. If one party in a power symmetry of 50 acquires a small additional advantage, the other 49 parties combined still have more than enough power to prevent harm to themselves. On the other hand, in an equal harm power symmetry between two parties, a substantial power advantage gained by one may readily destabilize the whole symmetry. But even here the symmetry is not doomed to devolve, provided that either the second party quickly acquires an equal additional increment of power, or the newly empowered party exercises its forbearance, out of moral considerations, or due to its expectations that its power advantage is temporary, and it may likely find itself in the circumstances of its counterparty at some time in the future. Having discussed both no harm and equal harm power symmetry in this and prior presentations, we will next talk about power asymmetries and instances of power asymmetries in our world.